Hi friend. Thank you for being here on my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I've got many more stories to share, and each one will be special. Now my story. My name is Anya, I'm 17, and honestly I've always thought of myself as an ordinary girl. School, friends, books, and music, that was my daily routine, until he came into our lives. His arrival changed the way I saw family, home, and even myself. My mom had been alone for a long time, and I saw how hard it was for her. She worked 2 jobs, came home tired, with endless sadness in her eyes. When she first brought a man into our house, I was cautious. His name was Sergey, tall, serious, with a hidden gentleness in his smile. At that moment I didn't realize he would play such a great role in my life. I remember that rainy evening. Mom poured hot tea, and he spoke about himself. His hands looked like they were made for work, and his voice was deep, calm, almost comforting just by itself. Still, to me he was a stranger. "This is my new friend," Mom said with hope in her voice. Soon her friend started living with us. At first I was angry. It was my house, my habits, and suddenly a stranger appeared. I watched him secretly, fixing sockets, helping Mom cook, cleaning the hallway. It all seemed natural, as if he had always belonged here. Yet I couldn't figure out what he thought about me. Sometimes our eyes met by chance and it felt like he could see through me. His gaze lingered a second longer than it should. In those moments something strange was born. Uneasy, tense. Then came the small details. He asked how my day was, brought fruit, saying, "For you, you need vitamins." Simple words, but in his tone there was care I rarely felt even from my father, who had left long ago. At the same time there was tension, as if he didn't quite know where the line was. Mom stayed late at work more often, leaving us alone. Silence filled the house, not empty but charged, electric. I caught myself listening for his steps, the sound of doors, or the clink of a cup. Simple sounds stirred unclear feelings in me. I tried to tell myself it was only because we weren't used to each other, that new things always feel strange. But inside something else was growing, unclear, unsettling, strangely magnetic. Sometimes I heard him talking on the phone, his voice confident, strong, making me want to be near. I noticed little things, how he adjusted his shirt sleeve, the way his brow furrowed in thought. The more I looked, the harder it was to remain indifferent. But he was my stepfather. Or maybe not yet, but heading there. That made my feelings even more contradictory. I didn't know where this road would lead, but already I felt there was no turning back. I often wondered why his presence changed me so much. After all, nothing unusual was happening. We simply lived under the same roof, shared dinners, exchanged occasional conversations. Yet with each day, I felt more and more that his presence affected me in a unique way. When Mom left for business trips or stayed late at work, the house transformed. The silence was no longer empty, but filled with a quiet expectation. I found myself inventing excuses to go to the kitchen, just to hear his voice or catch a glimpse of his gaze. One evening I stayed late reading in the living room, and he walked in asking if I was tired. Simple words, yet his tone carried true care. I felt his eyes linger on me longer than expected, making my heart beat faster. Inside me grew a conflict. My mind told me to keep a distance, but my heart pulled me closer. Day by day, I began to see not only Mom's husband, but also a man who understood without words. His presence brought me peace, as if he could protect me from unseen fears. Sometimes he played the guitar in the evening, soft chords filling the room, and I secretly cherished those moments. He rarely spoke about himself, but every word carried weight. I knew there was more to him than he revealed. I wondered, what did he feel about me? Did he notice the invisible thread connecting us? One evening while Mom was away, we had dinner together. Our talk was ordinary until he said, "You know, you're grown now, and I'm glad we can talk as equals." His words touched me deeply. For the first time I felt he saw me not as a girl but as a woman. It was both comforting and frightening. I smiled, trying to hide my nervousness, and he seemed to notice, falling silent too. Silence hung between us. Not awkward, but full of something new, unspoken. From that evening, our glances met more often. I told myself it was coincidence, but it was harder to believe. His eyes carried warmth, as if he feared saying too much, yet couldn't hide his feelings anymore. I sensed we were walking a fine line, and only we could decide if we'd cross it. But deep inside I knew this was only the beginning. Since then I started noticing every detail. Even the simplest situations seemed to carry hidden meaning. If he handed me a cup of tea, our fingers barely touched, and that slight contact sent shivers through me. If he opened the door and let me pass, I felt there was something more than politeness in his eyes. But I was afraid to believe it, afraid to be wrong. He was a reserved man, rarely saying more than necessary, but that restraint held strength. And every time we were alone, the air between us grew charged, so tangible it felt like I could reach out and touch it. I tried to distract myself, spending time with friends, focusing on studies, but coming home I felt again. Here within these walls my real story was unfolding. I noticed even the way he looked at Mom. His gaze toward her carried respect and care, but not the same warmth I sometimes saw when his eyes met mine. That realization unsettled me. I had no right to such thoughts. But can one control what grows on its own? One evening I stepped onto the balcony. The cool breeze stirred my hair. I thought I was alone, but then I heard footsteps behind me. He joined me quietly, standing beside me without a word. We watched the city lights in silence, and in that quiet I felt his presence more strongly than any words. "Aren't you cold?" he finally asked. I shook my head, though inside everything trembled. In that moment I understood. I wasn't afraid because he was near, but because I wanted him to always be near. His eyes lingered on me longer than usual, as if he was about to say something. But he remained silent, only giving a faint smile. That silence spoke louder than any confession. That night I couldn't sleep. Thoughts spun in my mind. What would happen next? Maybe I imagined everything, and he simply cared about me kindly. But my heart insisted otherwise. Inside, I felt our paths were already entwined, and all that remained was to wait for the moment when we would stop hiding behind silence. After that night on the balcony, everything felt different. I tried to act as usual, but every word, every glance from him struck me deeply. It was as if we were playing a silent game, one whose rules we both understood but never named aloud. Sometimes I wanted to ask directly, "What do you feel for me?" But I always stopped myself, too afraid of the answer. One evening, when Mom was late again, we sat in the living room. He was reading a newspaper. I pretended to watch a movie, but secretly I watched him. His face was calm yet thoughtful, and in that moment I realized I wanted to know everything about him. What he thought, feared, dreamed of. As if sensing my gaze, he set the paper aside and asked, "Why are you looking at me so seriously?" I blushed, looking away, but inside everything burned. He smiled faintly, more than a joke hid in that smile. "Just curious," I said softly. "Curious," he repeated, watching me again. "Sometimes you look at me like you see the real me." My heart sank. Could it be he felt it too, this something between us? I didn't know what to say. Silence filled the room. Not empty, but alive with unspoken thoughts. Then he added, "You know you're grown now. And sometimes I forget there's this formal line between us." His voice was calm, yet each word carried tension. He didn't say too much, but he didn't need to. His words struck like a spark. I nodded, trying to look composed, though inside I knew he had taken the first step. Careful, but still a step. From that evening, our conversations changed. They held more pauses, more unspoken meaning. Sometimes I felt words were just a mask, and the real feelings lived in silence, in the way we looked at each other. I felt it. The moment of truth was drawing closer. With each passing day, it felt like our relationship reached a new level, though we both stubbornly pretended nothing was changing. Mom remained busy with her work, often late, and he and I were left alone more and more often. In those moments, even ordinary situations carried a strange tension. Every gesture, every glance seemed to hide more than we dared to admit. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. The apartment was quiet. Only the light from the living room revealed he was there. Sergei sat in an armchair reading. When I entered, he looked up at me as if he had been waiting. "Home early," he said calmly, but there was a faint trace of joy in his voice. I sat across from him, and for a long time we said nothing. He seemed about to speak, but hesitated. My heart pounded harder. "Anya," he finally said, and the softness with which he spoke my name sent chills through me. Sometimes I think, we understand each other too well. I froze. The words were too direct, too revealing. "Is that bad?" I asked before I could stop myself. He gave a faint smile, sad, almost guilty. "I don't know. Maybe it's dangerous." He whispered that word, yet in it was everything. A confession, a warning, desire, and fear all at once. I looked at him and realized the line we never spoke of had already vanished. That evening we barely spoke, but the silence between us was louder than any words. I knew very soon he would say something that would change everything. Everything was building toward the moment words had to be spoken. And one evening it happened. Mom was late again and we had dinner alone. Silence filled the table, broken only by the sound of my heartbeat. He seemed unusually focused, as if battling himself. I tried to act calm, but each minute of waiting felt like torture. When we finished, he suddenly said, "Anya, we need to talk." His voice was serious, and I knew. This was the moment I had feared and awaited all at once. We went to the living room. He stopped by the window, staring outside, then turned to me. His eyes held no restraint this time. Only honesty, raw and vulnerable. "I shouldn't say this," he began, "but I can't stay silent anymore. You've long since stopped being just my wife's daughter to me. You've become someone without whom I can't imagine this home." Each word echoed inside me. I froze, unable to speak. "You're grown strong, real," he went on. "And I feel for you what I shouldn't feel." His voice trembled, and for the first time I saw him fragile. Inside me everything turned upside down. Fear and joy blended together. I stepped closer and whispered, "Me too. I don't know if it's right, but I feel the same." In that moment the world stopped. We stood facing each other, needing no more words. It was all clear without explanation. We didn't embrace, didn't touch, just looked into each other's eyes, and it was enough to know. There was no going back. That evening we sat together a long time, speaking about the future. We knew it wouldn't be easy, that challenges awaited. But the most important thing was this: we no longer hid. We chose to be honest with ourselves. And in that honesty, in the way we looked at one another, was the love I had been waiting for all along.